start from the beginning. Tell me your story. Where does it take place? What's going on?
So this took place in March 2007. Nicole was pregnant with our daughter Bailey, and she started going into contractions. And so we were doing, we wanted to have a natural birth. We wanted to bring that baby into the world as naturally as we could, because that's my philosophy on health, you know? So we made our way to the birthing center. We were thinking this was gonna be easy peasy. So we went in, and I guess probably about 20 hours into it, the midwife realized, hey, your baby hasn't positioned properly, and you're gonna need to go to the hospital. So when we got to Parkland, they came in and they were monitoring her, and the baby's heart rate had reached 204 beats per minute. So they said, hey, look, your wife's running fever, and we're afraid infection's gonna set in, so we're gonna need to do an emergency C-section. It's a 2-hour procedure. It'll be over before you know it. We'll come get you. So we came back, and when we got off the elevator, there's another doctor already sitting in there, and she stands up. So the first words out of her mouth were, Mr. Burfield, your wife lost a lot of blood. That was, I mean, as soon as she said that, I mean, I don't know if you've ever had like a lump in your throat, you know what I mean, and your stomach just drops out, but that's exactly what I felt like when she said that, because you just, you know, you just think that somebody died. When we took your wife back, we made the first incision, and when she said first incision, my mind started going to, what do you mean first incision? That means there was a second incision, right? So like first incision, she goes, when we made the first incision, we went in to get the baby out, but your baby was so lodged in your wife's pelvis that we couldn't get her out. So in order to make more room to work, we had to do a second incision, so we did a T-cut. So they cut her horizontal and vertical. And she said, but we still couldn't get your baby out. So it took 2 doctors pulling on the baby, trying to get the baby out, and we still couldn't get the baby out. So what we did is we took the table and we had to invert it.
And the next thing I know, my feet are going up in the air, and I'm like, well, this isn't right.
Right. I never saw this.
Yeah, exactly. So then 2 doctors come around by my head, each on each side, and each has like a leg, and they're just pulling and pulling and pulling and pulling. And then finally they did get her out, but then she wasn't crying.
It took almost 2 minutes to resuscitate her, and she's bruised from her neck to her rib cage. Her right arm is completely paralyzed, and she has what we think is called torticollis, and it's basically where there's a lot of just sprain in the neck muscles, which causes a tightening of those muscles, and the baby's head was sitting like this, right? And her foot, arch of her left foot is turned out. That's probably due to positioning, so she's probably been stuck in this position for some time, and so her arch of her left foot's turned out, but everybody's okay, and you're the proud father of a baby girl. So I'm waiting for them to tell me somebody's dead, you know, and just to hear that everybody was alive and okay was just amazing. I'm like, well, what do you do for that? And what do you recommend? And they said, well, we're gonna recommend physical therapy for her, and if that doesn't work, then the next option is gonna be surgery. And what we'll end up doing is we'll go in and they'll cut her neck muscles to help straighten out her head. Now the downside to that is she'll never be able to turn her head to the right. With the paralyzed arm, it was just like, it is what it is. She has a paralyzed arm. And I was just like,
That doesn't sound right?
Yeah, I'm like, that's not an option. And I'm like, you know, I said, I think we're gonna take her to a chiropractor. And she goes, oh, no, don't do that. She's like, she's too little for that. I've been under regular chiropractic care for 22 years. I used to have headaches, and I would get them 4 to 5 days a week from age 14 to age 21 when I got introduced to chiropractic. And my headaches went away once I started getting adjusted, and from that point I just, you know, never had another headache, and I would just use chiropractic as a form of wellness. That was the first thought. I'm like, her arm is paralyzed, like something isn't connecting. It's a perfect way to put it. And I was just like, maybe some damage to the nerves. After that, you know, they put Bailey in the NICU, and my first call is to my chiropractor. And I'm like, hey, I said, you need to get down here. And I told him what had just happened. And I said, her right arm's paralyzed. I don't know what else to do except adjust her. He came down. He didn't have a license to practice in a hospital. So he didn't have hospital privileges, so he could have gotten in trouble for that. We told him he was a family member. He was able to go back into the NICU with me. She's all hooked up to tubes and everything, you know, and IVs and whatnot, and she's just bruised everywhere. He ended up filling her neck and did an adjustment. I mean, it was like he just took his fingers, and he told me that he puts about as much pressure on the spine as like taking like a tomato and like checking for ripeness. You know, you kind of press on it. It's real gentle pressure, and sure enough, that's how he did it. And he left. And about 2 hours later, I'm sitting there watching her, and all of a sudden I see her fingers start doing this. She starts moving her fingers. So I call him back, and I'm like, hey, I said, what you did worked. I said, you need to come back down here tomorrow and do the same thing. So he came back down the next day, and he adjusted her again. And by the end of that day, her arm was fully functioning, it was moving. But you know, in my mind, sometimes you've got to break the rules, you know, in order to help people, save somebody's life. I found a chiropractor in Dallas-Fort Worth who specifically cared for birth trauma babies. We drove Bailey there and started getting her adjusted 3 times a week, and this went on for about initially 6 months. Bailey saw that chiropractor for the first 2 years of her life, but within 6 months, completely healed. Like, you wouldn't even know that she had a problem. And the cool thing with that is that the arch of her left foot, like, it had turned outward. They had recommended a boot at the hospital. Oh, she'll wear a boot and you'd eventually, you know, move. And the chiropractor's like, she doesn't have to do that. She's like, I can adjust that area. I can adjust the joints in the foot and the ankle. And she's like, it'll resolve on its own. And sure enough, left foot turned out. 6 months later, left foot, arch of the left foot completely turned back in. So, I mean, it was just amazing.
Maybe they should have chiropractors in the hospitals.
I know, right?
Right? Yeah, why not?
Yeah.
I say, you know, it's a chiropractic miracle, but it's not a miracle. It's science, you know what I mean? Like, if your nerves don't work right, your body doesn't work right, it can't function properly. By keeping the spine in good alignment and keeping the nerves free from interference, you give that body its best chance at expressing optimal health. Don't be afraid to speak with a chiropractor, even if they tell you, like they told me, oh, don't take her to the chiropractor. Had I listened to that, she wouldn't be the happy, healthy kid that she is today. Chiropractic saved our daughter's life. She's gonna be 12 this year. She's a self-proclaimed computer geek, you know, loves video games, but more than anything loves to create. I think ultimately in life she wants to be an artist. Who knows how that situation would have turned out? I mean, if she would have had surgery, like I said, they told me she'd never be able to turn her head to the right. What kind of life is that, you know? I don't know if like she would be doing anything that she'd be doing today if she still had that. I think we'd have a completely different Bailey if it wasn't for chiropractic.